All right. In this video, we will learn about the CSS Box Model. Basically, in HTML and CSS, when we are working with HTML and CSS, each and every element, like the HTML element, is basically a box. And we have seen that before as well. So if I just go to the code, not the code, in the browser, and go here, and as you can see, whenever I am selecting something from this DevTools, so this H1, for example, is the form of a box. The H2 is another box, and so on. So the list items are box as well, and this input also the box. This checkbox is also the box. Okay, so this is basically that, like everything inside of the HTML and CSS is a box, and we have to work with that. So we have to structure the boxes by using CSS, and in that way we can have a decent looking website. So this is basically that. So it is quite simple. So we have the documentation for the CSS box model on MDN. You can go through that. Or what I prefer this documentation, which is the CSS box model by the W3 schools. Okay, and here is a very good picture of the CSS box model. So what it is saying? It is saying each and every box in HTML and CSS have the content. Then we have the border, right? But between the border and the content, we can have some spacing, which is padding. And outside the border, we can have some spacing, which is called margin. So here is the definition, like the explanation, which is really great. Basically, the content is the content of the box where text and images appear. Okay, padding clears an area around the content. The padding is transparent as well. Border, a border that goes around the padding of the content, which is very, very important. So we can have padding, we cannot have padding as well, but the border always goes around that. Okay, and then margin clears an area outside the border. So margin is outside the border, and the margin is transparent as well. Okay, so we can see that in action as well. So what I can do, I can go to my code. Okay, I can go to my code, and for the H1, what I can do something like padding of 20 pixel. Don't worry about the padding and the margins, we will definitely learn about that. Okay, and margin of 20 pixel. So if I just save and go to the browser, now as you can see, there are some spaces, but more importantly, whenever I am selecting the H1 right now, so there are 3 different colors showing. First of all, okay, let's add a border as well. So that will make a little bit more sense. So border, we can do 2 pixel, solid, and salmon color. Okay, all right. So if I just go here, now we have a border. So if I just inspect that, so as you can see, the blue box is the content box. The green space, the green box which we have currently here, it is indicating the padding, and the orange-ish, yellowish color box, which is indicating the margin. So, and also inside of the computer tab as well, as you can see, here is the diagram which is generated by the DevTools, which is very, very good. So as you can see, we have added the margin here. So it is the margin, which is 20 pixel. Then we have the border. Okay, and then we have the padding as well, which is 20 pixel as well, and the border is 2 because the width of the border is 2 pixel. So this is the content as well here, this blue box which is indicating the content. So this is basically the box model in CSS, and it will be very, very handy to understand the box model because we have to manipulate these like the margins, paddings, borders like quite often while building up the websites, okay, by using HTML and CSS. And this is the foundation theory to do so. So basically I can show some other things as well. What I can do, I can just comment it out and I can just show it to you, the star which we had previously, like the selecting all of the things, and I can add a border of 1 pixels, not 1 pixel, 2 pixels solid and salmon. But what I'll do, I'll just make the opacity a little bit lower, save and go to the browser. And as you can see here, what I was saying previously, like everything is a box and we can see that in action basically. So this was a span, basically this is a span, right? This is another span as well. So this is a box, the h1 is a box, the container of this, it is a box, these links are a box, and so on and so forth. So basically we can see each and every box by using this particular border, applying this particular border. And basically we will learn about these borders, paddings and margins in the upcoming videos. Okay, so this is the introduction of the box model, and we will learn about the paddings and margins in the upcoming videos, right? So this is the box model in CSS. Hi there. In this video, we will learn about the borders in CSS. So before moving forward, what I have done, I have got rid of everything inside of the HTML. Just I have the h1 here, and inside of the CSS also I have got rid of everything. We have the font and we are setting the font family. So if I go to the browser, here is our heading. Okay, nothing fancy. So in this video we will learn about the border in CSS. So this is the border, and the border property, the CSS property, is a shorthand for border width, border style, border color. So let's go the border width, border style and border color one by one, and after that we will come back to border and we will learn the shorthand syntax. Okay, so let's do the border width. So this is the border width, which is pretty much self-explanatory, because the border width sets the width of the border basically. So if I just go here, so select the h1 and do border dash width, and here I can set something like 20, not 20, something like 10 pixel, something like this. Okay, and if I hit save and go into the browser, nothing happened. But visually nothing happened. But if I just inspect that, and here if we go here inside of that, so give me a second, the style, so the border width is applied. Now let's add a color to the border. So the border color is also self-explanatory because it sets the color of the border. So basically red, green, or something hex color or something like that. Okay, so let's do a border color, and do something like blue or blue violet. Save, go to the browser once again, and still nothing happened because we have to add the border style. Okay, so the border style is a little bit complicated here. We can have a bunch of styles, which we have. Most of the time what you have seen me using is the solid, but we have dashed, we have dotted, we have hidden, we have none, we have double, we have rigid, and so on and so forth. So let's go here and do border style. Okay, and let's do solid. And now if I go to the browser, now our border is showing. Okay, so this is our border. So we can add multiple styles, not multiple, but we can play around with some styles. We can add dashed, save, and go ahead and it is the dashed border, which doesn't look good. We can add double. Okay, so it adds the double border. Okay, and what we have, if I do control and space, we have the double, we have the group. So let's do that. And now, as you can see, it is adding some sort of a 3D effect to the border. But the most common, which you will see using most of the time, is solid. Okay, so this is the solid border. Now, each of this, the border width, we have the total control over each of the sides. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the shorthand property as well. So the border width itself is a shorthand property of the border bottom width, border left width, border right width, and the border top width. Okay, we can set everything there. So what I can do, I will demonstrate the color for the border and you will get the idea. Okay, so each of the sides can have the border bottom color, left color, right color, and top color. So let's do that. So I will comment this one, or I will get rid of that. Okay, and after this I will do border bottom or top. Let's do top color, and let's do red. Then we will have the border bottom, or the, let's do right color, which will be blue. Border dash bottom color will be green, and then border left color will be yellow. Okay, so in that way, what will happen, we will have different colors in different sides of the border. In that way, we can change the colors, so we have the total flexibility there. So basically this is the border color, and this sort of thing, like the top color, right color, bottom color, left color, will apply to the width and also will apply to the style as well. So if I just go here and do border dash bottom style, okay, and do dashed, for example. So now each of the border, like the left, top, and the right, will be solid, but the bottom one will be dashed. Okay, so it is setting the solid style for each of the border, and then after that it is overwriting the style for the bottom border to dashed. So in that way we have the full control. Okay, so now let's comment out everything and let's learn about the shorthand syntax, how we can do that. So go to the border, and now here is the syntax. So basically border, you can add solid, like the just the style. You can add width and the style. You can add the style and the color. And the most common, which you will see used most often, is the width, then style, and then color, this particular property. So we can do that. So we can do border, and then do something like, okay, colon, and something like 5 pixel solid, and then do salmon. Okay, so in that way it will set the border width to 5 pixel, it will set the border color to salmon, and it will set the border style to solid. Okay, so this is basically the border shorthand. And also you might be thinking, okay, by using the shorthand, can I just style the bottom border or the top border or something like that? Yes, you can do that. So to do that, what you have to do, you have to do border and then do bottom, something like this, or let's do top, something like this, and then do once again 5 pixel solid and do something like green. Not solid, let's do dashed. Dashed, okay. And if I go here, now the top border is dashed and green. So many of the times what you will see, like we will add the border to only the bottom. Okay, so if we want to, like, for example, create a navigation bar or something like that, so in that way we can do border bottom to 2 pixel or 1 pixel, something like that, solid, and then do gray or whatever this color. Okay, so save. I don't think this will be visible that much, so gray. Okay, and here it is. So here is our border. And once again, if the element is block level element, then it will be spanning across, like the border will be spanning across the whole width of the element. But if the element is not the block level element, it is an inline element, in that case it will just around that particular width of the text. Okay, so yeah, this is basically the border in CSS. So most of the time what you will see this syntax. So this one, let me just comment out that, uncomment that, and yeah, this syntax. Okay, so this syntax you will see most of the time using. Okay, and also the border bottom as well. So we will use the shorthand syntax for all of the borders, which we will be using inside of this, basically the upcoming videos. Okay, all right. Hey there. So in this video, we will learn about the height and the width properties and how we can use them to basically set the height and the width of the box, basically the content box in CSS. So let's get started. First of all, what we have this. I will just cut that and paste it down below. Nothing will change. Now, if I just go to the browser, as you can see, this blue box, what we are currently seeing, is indicating the width and the height of the content box. Okay, so we have learned about the content box in the previous video. So this is the height and the width of the content box. So how we can manipulate that? We can manipulate that by adding a width or the height property. So let's do that. First of all, we have this border, so I will not get rid of that. It can stay. So here, also one thing to remember is that the h1 is a block level element. So for the inline element, the border will not be spanning across the whole screen. Okay, it will be just the text content. That will be all. Okay, now what we can do width of something like 6 or 700 pixel, and we can do height of let's do 100 pixel, and for now I will just comment out this height. Okay, I will just comment out this height for now, just to show. And now you might be thinking, okay, this is not that much changed, but if I just collapse this particular dev tools, as you can see here, so previously the box was spanning across the whole width, but now it is only 700 pixels of width. So if I go here and in the computer tab, as you can see, this is the 700 times 40.40. So this is not set by us, it is set by the browser itself. Okay, but we can change the width and the height as well. Okay, so I can just do something like this, and now as you can see, our box, like the content box, has the height of 100 pixels. Okay, so this is how you can change the height and the width of the content box. Please keep that in mind. We are changing the height and the width of the content box. We are not accounting for paddings and we are not accounting for margins as well. Okay, we are just setting the height and the width of the content box, and this behavior we can change that as well, and which we will definitely see in the upcoming videos. Okay, so this is what it is, like the height and the width property in CSS. Now what we can do something like dot container, and here what we can do something like dot box, not nox but box, and hash box as well. Okay, so here is our container and here is our box, and we will have a look into the height and the width property, and we will learn about the percentages as well. Okay, so now if I go here, so I can do container, and then after that I can do height of something like 500 pixel, and width of something like 600 pixels. Okay, now inside of that we have the box, right? Okay, but before moving to the box, what I will do, I will add a border, because without the border we will not be able to see anything. So border, so let's do 2 pixels solid and black. Okay, all right, and then what we can do, we can here can style the box. So dot box, like the we are selecting the class, so we can do border, and we can do 2 pixel solid, and we can add some color, something like lawn green or something like that. Okay, or what I'll do, I'll just go here and add something like this blue or this purplish color. Okay, so that we can see. So now if I do something like width, I can do something like 100 pixel. Okay, and the height of 100 pixel as well, I can do that. And if I go here, here is our box. Okay, so this is the box which we have, and this is the container. All right, but now for example, you want that this box should be half of the width and half of the height. Okay, and this height and the width should change according to the container itself, like the parent. So how we can do that? So what we can do, we can go here, and for example for this width we can do 50%, and for the height we can do the same thing, which is 50%. Okay, and hit save, go to the browser. So if we go here and select this box, as you can see, the width is 300 pixel and the height is 250 pixels. We did not set that. It is set by default because we are using the percentage syntax. Okay, now what I can do, I can do something like that can go 400 and the width can go, okay, don't do that, and the width can go 800 pixel. Okay, and hit save, go to the browser, and now as you can see, the width is now 400 pixel and the height is now 200 pixels. So it is adapting to the width and the height of the container. Our box is adapting to that. So yeah, this is basically the basics of the height and the width, and we will be seeing like the margins and paddings in the upcoming videos. Okay, so yeah. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we will learn about the padding in CSS. So padding, if you remember, I will go to the browser and go here. So the padding is the space which is optional space between the border and the content. Okay, the content box. So we can add padding. By default, padding is non-existent, but we can add some padding. Okay, so go to the code editor, and here what I'll do, I'll just get rid of this, get rid of these things as well. Okay, all right. And then what I can do, I can get rid of this and do a span of, hey, this is a span. Okay, this is a span. All right, so save and go to the browser, and here, as you can see, here is our span. And also what I'll do, I will just get rid of this as well. Okay, so now this is our heading and this is a span. So let's select that. So let's do span and do border. Let's do 2 pixels solid and do something like salmon or this slate blue, something like this. Okay, and go here. Right now, as you can see, our border is just fitting the content of the span, but for our heading, because it is a block level element, it is spanning across the whole screen. Okay, now what I can do, I can show it to you. So here, this h1, so as you can see here, I'll just zoom in a little bit. So as you can see, the padding values are non-existent here. The border is 5 pixel here, and then we have some margins which the browser adds by default for the h1. Once again, we have this span. So for the span, we do not have any margin, and also we do not have any padding, but the border is 2 pixel. Okay, all right, so let's go here and do something like padding. And here, this padding is the shorthand syntax for 4 different CSS properties which is related to padding. So if I go here in the MDN documentation, the padding, here it is, and here what we can do, we can individually set the padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. So let's do that first of all, and then we will come back to the shorthand. So padding left of 10 pixel, padding right of 10 pixel, padding bottom of 10 pixel, and padding right, we have done that. So padding top, okay, top of 10 pixel. And here you can set anything. I am here setting all of the padding to 10 pixel because I want to show that how we can set the padding, but you can set anything. Okay, now here, as you can see, there is a gap between our content box and the border. And if I just inspect that, now we have the padding for each side of 10 pixel. Okay, we can go ahead and change it to something like padding right. For padding right, what I can do, I can do 20 pixel, and padding left, I can do 20 pixel as well. So if I do that, we can have that as well. And now we have the padding left and the padding right 20 pixel. All right, so this is pretty much easy to understand. Now what we will do, we will go here and comment out this, and we will learn about the shorthand syntax, which is padding and not auto. This auto completes that. But before doing something with the padding, let's go to the documentation and check the syntax for that. So here is that. And now, as you can see, we can add padding to something like this one EM or one rem. We didn't learn about that, but we will definitely do. So let's add some pixels, right? So let's do something like 10 pixel. Hit save, and what it will do, it will add 10 pixels of padding to each side for all of the sides. Okay, the left, right, top and bottom. All right. Then we have some other syntax, which is the top and bottom and left and right. So we can add two different values. The first value will indicate the top and bottom, and the second value will indicate the left and right. So let's do that. So for the top and bottom, I want 10 pixel, and for the left and right, what we had previously, right now I want 30 pixel. Okay, and hit save and go here in the browser. And if I just select that once again, so here it is. So we have the padding of 10 pixel top and bottom, and for the left and right we have the 30 pixel. All right, now what we can do, we can go to the documentation once again, and now we have the other syntax as well, which is basically for 4 values for each of the paddings. But you have to keep in mind is that these 4 values are not random. These 4 values has to be passed in the clockwise order. So first value will indicate the top padding, the second value will indicate the right padding, then the third value will indicate the bottom padding, and the fourth value will indicate the left padding. So let's see that in action. So for the top I want 10 pixel, for the right I want 15 pixel, for the bottom I want something like 12 pixel, and for the left I want something like 60 pixel, something like that. Okay, and hit save and go to the code, not the code editor but in the browser. And as you can see, if I just inspect that, as you can see, so here is our padding. For the left we have 60 pixel, for the top we have 10, for the right we have 15, for the bottom we have 12 pixel, okay, of padding. All right, so this is the padding, and once again I have showed that to you in the previous video as well. So whenever I am selecting this, so the padding is selected and it is selecting in a greenish color, then the border is basically the yellowish color and the margin is the orangish color. Okay, so in that way you can see the margin paddings in the element. Okay, so yeah, this is the basically the padding in CSS. Okay, in this video we will learn about the margin in CSS. Okay, so margin, in case you do not remember, I will go here in the box model. Here the margin is the space around the border. It is the space around the border. Okay, so this is basically that. So margin clears an area outside the border. The margin is also transparent. Okay, so now we will learn about the margin syntax. Okay, so as you can see here, this margin syntax is here in the documentation of MDN. Now here, this margin syntax is the shorthand syntax for margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. Okay, so what I have done in CSS, I have just got rid of every padding or any other CSS, just we have the border, nothing at all. Okay, now if I go to the browser once again, so if I go browser, and here as you can see, the H1, the heading element, basically all of the heading elements comes with some type of margin, top and bottom. Okay, so we will learn about that as well. So we can reset that as well. So what we will do, so what I can do, I can go here, so do margin top of 10 pixel, margin right of 12 pixel, margin bottom of something like 16 pixel, not 116, 16 pixel, and margin bottom of something like 8 pixel. Okay, and if I go here, now as you can see, there is this margin. Yep, so as you can see here it is. Okay, So we have the top margin of 10 pixel, we have the right margin of 12 pixel, and we have the bottom margin of 8 pixel. Why there is no left? Because I have done margin bottom twice. So let's do left. Okay. All right. So we did not set the left margin. So now if I go here, so now we have the top margin of 10 pixel. We have the right margin of 12 pixel. We have the bottom margin of 8 pixel, and we have the left margin of 16 pixel. And you can add the margin to the span as well, which I will not be doing in this video, but you can definitely do that. Okay. So here is the longhand syntax basically. So as you might have guessed, just like padding, we have the shorthand syntax as well. And if I go here in the documentation, as you can see, we can apply to all 4 sides by using just a single value, which we will do here. So margin of, let's do 10 pixel, something like that. And now if I go here, all of the sides for this H1 has the 10 pixel margin. And by the way, this margin is inside of the Chrome developer tools is indicated by this orangish box. Okay. Once again, we have another syntax, which is for two values. For the first one, we have the top and bottom value, and for the last one, we have the left and right value. So what I can do margin top and bottom of 10 pixel, margin left and right of 30 pixel. Save and go to the browser, and now we have the margin left and right of 30 pixel and margin top and bottom of 10 pixels. All right. Now once again we have the another syntax for adding 4 values, which is once again it will be going clockwise. So the top, then right, the bottom, and then the left. Okay, so let's go here and we can do top of 10 pixel, right of 30 pixel, bottom of 10 pixel, and the left of something like 25 pixel, something like that. Hit save and go to the browser, and now we have successfully added the desired margin. So margin top and bottom is 10 pixel, margin left and margin right is the margin left is 25 pixel and the margin right is 30 pixel. Okay, so this is basically the margin. And whenever we want to space out some elements, like the adjacent elements, we use the margin to do that. As you might have seen, this span is now spacing out with this heading. So I can increase that. So top, right, bottom. So the bottom one I can do 100 pixel, for example. And if I save that and go to the browser, once again now the span and the heading are spaced out because the margin is now 100 pixel on the heading element. Okay, so whenever we want to separate out 2 different adjacent elements of HTML, so we use margin to do that. Okay, so in the next video we will learn something which is called the alternate box model in CSS. Okay, in this video we will learn about a very important CSS property called box sizing. And it is very important property because it will determine how you write CSS into your project. Basically, it is very important. So as you might have remembered, when we have learned about the width and the height property, right, we have mentioned that okay, the width and the height property by default changes the width and the height of the content box. Okay, so if I go here in the documentation here, so by default the CSS box model, the width and the height you assign to an element is applied only to the element's content box. Okay, if the element has any border or padding, not margin, to be honest, margin is calculated differently, but if the element has any border or padding, this is then added to the width and the height. Basically, the width and the height do not include the borders and the padding. Okay, to arrive at the size of the box that's rendered on the screen. Okay, this means that when you set width and the height, you have to adjust the value you give to allow for any border, padding, and like that might be added. Okay, border and the padding that might be added. Okay, so what does this mean? So basically, if you create a box, okay, if I go to the CSS W3 schools documentation here, I'll zoom in a little bit. So without the CSS box sizing property, by default, the width and the height of the element is calculated like this. So width plus padding plus border is the actual width of the element, and then height plus padding plus border is the actual height of the element. So in that way, what happens is that whenever you are setting some width and the height, for example, you set a width of 400 pixel. Then if you apply some padding of left and right, for example, of 20 pixel, then what will happen? The net size of that particular box will be 400 plus 20 for the left plus 20 for the right. So 440 pixel. And I will show it to you then. Okay, so if I go to the code editor here, and what I'll do, I'll get rid of this and get rid of these as well. And now what I'll do hash and then do box. Okay, I will create two divs, and another one I will do hash of alternate dash box. Okay, so we have two divs. One is the ID of box, and another one has the ID of alternate box. So inside of that, I will just select the all of the divs currently right now and do a height of 400 pixel and then do a width of 400 pixel. Okay, and then I will add some border of like say 10 pixel solid, and let's do something like salmon. Okay, and then what we can do, we can add some margin to that. So let's do like 20 pixels, something like that. Okay, and for the color, so background color, so let's do something like blue violet. Okay, hit save and let's see how that looks in our browser. So here is our two boxes, and I will open the DevTools and go to the Computer tab. Now, if you just select one of them, what will happen is that, as you can see, this is the content box is 400 by 400, and then we have some of the border. Okay, let's add some padding as well. Okay, so padding of, let's say, 20 pixel each side. Okay, now let's see that. So as you can see here, we have a little bit of the round off of like 400 pixels by 400 pixel. Then we have the padding, and then we have the border, and then we have the margin. So let me just reduce the size a little bit. Let's do something like 200 pixel by 200 pixel. Okay, hit save, and now it should be a little bit of the refresh. So this dev tools are just setting up the, because we have set up the padding, so let's reduce the padding to 10 pixel. Okay, let's see, and reduce the border by let's say 5 pixel. Okay, hit save. Okay, now everything looks good. So because we had added a bunch of padding, so it was not showing up the proper results. Now it does. So as you can see, the content box is 200 by 200. Then we have the padding of 20 pixel. Then we have the border of 5 pixel. So if you calculate, so what will happen? So the net height of this element right now is 200 pixel plus 20 for top plus 5, so 25. Then once again for bottom we have 20 and then we have 5, so 20 20 40 5 5 10, so 50 pixels. So net height of this particular box is 250 pixels, and once again the width is 250 pixels as well. But now you want, like, hey, whatever the height and the width I am setting, I want the whole box to be that size, and I want everything to be calculated accordingly. So in that case, what happens? We have to use the box sizing property. So if I go inside of this code editor, and here what I can do, I can select the alternate box, and now if I select box sizing to border box, there are two values, border box and content box. The content box is set by default, so I can set border box and hit save. Now if I go to the browser, what will happen is that, as you can see, this box is now quite shrunk. And if I just set that, now what has happened, the content box size is now shrunk down from 200 pixel to 150 pixel height and the width. And then we have the 20 pixel of padding, and then we have the 5 pixel of border. So what does that mean? So I'll just zoom in a little bit. So what does that mean? This means that the total height for of this particular element until the border, basically margin is not counted. Okay, so the total height is 150 pixel for the content box. Then we have 20 pixel of padding, so 20 20 40 and 5 5 10. So the total height is now 200 pixel, which we have set. Okay, which we have set here, like the 200 pixel height and the width. So basically, whenever you want to set the height and the width of the whole element, like until the border, then you want to use this box sizing property, and it is a very very important property, and I like to use that quite often. Like what I do usually, you don't have to write this, so I will reset everything. So what I'll do, I'll just reset everything. So margin of 0, padding of 0, and then I do box sizing of border box for all of the elements, so that whenever I am setting some sort of height and the width, then the height and the width is set for the border box, not for the content box. Okay, so in that way what will happen, it is more predictable in my opinion. It is totally my opinion. You can use content box as well, but it is totally my opinion that in that way, whenever I am setting the height and the width, then I have a proper way to measure. Okay, so this div, this alternate box div, will have the total height of 200 pixel and the width of 200 pixel as well. Okay, or whatever I am setting it to. So this is the border box property, and it is a very very important property. And if I just go here, as you can see, nothing that much changed, but what happened is that the border box property also applied to the first box as well, and now the two boxes are in the same size. Okay, so this is the border box property. It is very very important property, and you have to remember, whenever you are setting the height and the width of any element, if you want to set the height and the width of the content box, then you can use the box sizing of content box. But if you want to set the height and the width of the border box, then you have to set the box sizing to the border box. Okay, so this is the border box property in CSS. Very very important. Okay, in this video we will talk about the display property in CSS. So here is the documentation which we have currently right now. So as you can see, according to MDN, the display CSS property sets whether an element is treated as a block or inline box, and the layout used for its children, such as flow layout, grid, and flex. So this later part, like the layout of the children, we will learn in great detail in the upcoming videos. But in this video, what we will focus into this first part, like how this display property can change a block element to an inline element and vice versa. Okay, so let's get started. So I will go to the code editor. I have written some comments which I will get back to, but before that, what I'll do, I will get rid of these boxes. Okay, I will create a div, and here what I can do, I can create a paragraph. Okay, and Lauren, if some text. Okay, and here it is, and what I'll do, I'll copy paste that bunch of times. Okay, now if I go to the browser, here is our text. Okay, so I have made some changes here as well. So what I will do, I will just get rid of these styles. Okay, now everything should be good. So now here is our paragraph. Okay, now what I'll do, I will add a span inside of that, or an anchor element inside of that. Okay, so for example, just here, an anchor element, href can be https://google.com. Okay, and I can say like go to Google. All right, now here is our link. As you can see, where does it go? Okay, here it is. So here is our link. Okay, I will open the div tools as well, and looks like I can just make it a little bit on the okay, I'll just cut and paste it down here. Okay, now yeah, either way it is coming to the end. Okay, now it is good, so it is in the middle. Okay, so and we are missing a space. So now what you might have seen, okay, so if I just go here and create an h1, and this is a heading. Okay, now if I add the margin to the h1 tag, h1, and then I add a margin, let's add a border like 5 pixel solid salmon. Okay, and add a height of 100 pixel, add a width of something like 400 pixel, something like that, right? Add a padding of something like 10 pixel, add a margin of 10 pixel. Okay, and you might be wondering, okay, we are just setting the height and the width, the padding and the margin. By the way, I am using here box sizing to border box. Okay, so this particular CSS is there, so that is why the box sizing will be border box. Okay, so now if I just save and go to the browser, as you can see, it is expected as expected, right? And if I just inspect that, and yeah, the height and the width have changed accordingly to the border box. Okay, so nothing fancy, and the margin is pushing the content, the padding is pushing the content, and the border is also doing its job. Okay, now if I go here, this is our link, right? This is our link which we have. Okay, and by default h1 is a block level element, and the anchor tag is an inline element. Okay, so now what I'll do just select the anchor element, and I will just copy paste this CSS as it is to show the difference. And here what I'll do blue violet. Okay, now if I go to the browser, something interesting happened. The margin on the left and the right is working. If I just go here, yep, if I just zoom in, so as you can see, the margin on the left and the right, basically in the horizontal direction, is working, but the height is not being set properly, the width is not being set properly, and padding is working once again in the horizontal and the vertical direction. As you can see, that is why the border has some padding, but it is not doing anything, it is not pushing the content, right? Why is that? There are two different behaviors we are encountering for two different elements. Okay, so I want to select this one. So as you can see as well, according to this basically this wireframe or this diagram, the margin is applying only in the horizontal direction, not in the vertical direction. Why is that? Because the anchor element is an inline element, and here is our comment. Okay, so I'll just cut that and paste it down here so that we can all read it together. Okay, for the inline element, the element is in the same line, which we have seen. If I go here, as you can see, it is this particular anchor tag, basically anchor element. It is in the same line as the paragraph. Okay, the height and the width does not work for the inline elements, which we have seen. Basically, this is the proper height and the width which we have set, but here the height and the width are ineffective. Okay, then the vertical margin and the padding does not make difference to other elements. Basically, the margin and the padding is not pushing other elements. Okay, so yes, it is pushing this particular text basically here and here in the horizontal direction, but in the vertical direction there is nothing. Okay, no effect. All right, so what is the solution? Now here comes the part with the display property. Okay, so this is the display property in CSS. So the display property can change how an element behave. Okay, so by default, like, the headings are block level elements and the anchor tags are the inline elements, but we can change that. So we have display to block, we have display to inline block, we have display to none, which we will cover. But here, as you can see, we can set the display to inline as well. So let's do that, or we can set the display to block as well. So if I just go here inside of this anchor tag, basically here in the CSS, and just do display of block, then what will happen? As you can see right now, our margin, padding, height, and the width, everything is working. Basically, the inline anchor tag has transformed to a block level element. How cool is that? So in that way, we can change how an element behaves. So we can do the opposite thing to the h1 as well. So I can do display to inline. Once I do that, what will happen? The margin in the vertical direction will not work, and height and the width will not work. So in that way, this is the inline heading. Okay, and I can prove it to you as well, because if I just add another span after that and say hello, this span and this h1 should be inline, which it is. But if I just comment out this inline thing, the display inline property, now they are in the separate line, because h1 by default is a block level element. So the block level elements have the effect of the height and the width and the margin and the padding. Everything works properly. But for the inline elements, some of the things like as I have point out here, like the height and the width do not work, and the margin and the padding do not move other elements. Okay, so here it is. So here are the basic differences of the display inline and display block. Now we will learn one other thing which is called inline block. Okay, what is that? This is basically, you might have some idea about that. Basically, this is the merger of the inline and the block. So for example, you want the margin, padding, height and the width to work, but you want to have an inline element, because currently right now our span is a block level element. So how we can do that? We can do that by using inline block. Okay, hit save. Now our height, width, margin, padding will work, as well as the element is in the same line. So if this is the use case, in that case you can use the display of inline block. So I hope you have understood the thing, understood the problem, and what problem the display property resolves. Okay, so we can have a practical example as well. For example, let's go under this div and create another div. Okay, and inside of that we will create another div. Inside of that we will have a p of lorem. Okay, save. And then we will have another div. I will just copy paste that. Okay, hit save. And have I added something to the div? I did not. So here is our the text. Okay, so here are our two paragraphs, I believe. So now what I want, okay, what I'll do, I'll just comment out these things. Okay, I'll just comment out these things so that it is easier for us to understand. Okay, and for the divs, I'll just comment out the anchor, comment out the heading as well. Okay, now for the div, what I can do, div is a block level element basically. What I can do something like height of 400 pixel, width of 600 pixel, and let's do a border of something like 5 pixels solid blue violet. Okay, and do a padding of 10 pixel. Okay, let's see how that looks. So here are our divs, and also there is another div, I believe. Okay, so this is the div. Okay, so I'll get rid of this outer div, so we will have only two divs. Okay, so div within a paragraph, and once again another div within a paragraph, so that everything is good. Okay, all right, now everything looks good. And let's add a margin as well, of margin of 10 pixel. Margin of 10 pixel. Okay, now here are our divs and the paragraphs. Now what I want this particular box, the later one which is below the another one, I want them side by side. So how I can do that? I can do that by setting up the property of the display to inline block. So, and also I can just add a width of 400 and height of, let's say, 300. Let's see how that looks. Okay, this looks good. Now what I can do the display of inline block. Okay, and now our paragraphs, basically our boxes, are side by side. Okay, so in that way we can do something similar with this display of inline block, but there is a better way. And spoiler alert, the better way is using the flex boxes or the grid. Okay, but we can use the display inline block to achieve the same thing as well. Okay, so here it is. So this is the display of inline block. So I hope you have understood like the what is the differences between the block level element and the inline element, and how we can use the display property of block inline and inline block to our advantage. Okay, so yeah, this is it for this video. Please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Okay, all right. Okay, in this video we will learn a special display property which is called display none. Okay, so whenever we want to just disappear some element from the website or from the HTML document, we can use this CSS property. Okay, so let's use that and let's see how that looks. Okay, so before moving forward, what I'll do, I'll just get rid of these things, get rid of these as well. Okay, so we will have a clean slate, and once again setting the box sizing to border box as well. Okay, and what I'll do, I'll just remove everything inside of this HTML body. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll do a h1, and this is a heading. Okay, then before the h1 I'll add a span, which is the inline element. This is a span, and copy that and paste down below as well. This is a span. All right. Okay, now what I can do, I can go here h1, and I can set up many of the things, something like border of 5 pixels, solid blue violet. Okay, set and go to the website. Okay, go to the HTML. As you can see, so there is our heading. For this one, what I'll do, I'll just comment out this one as well. Okay, this might be a little bit confusing to you. Okay, all right, so here it is. So there is a span, there is another span, and there is our heading. Now what I can do, I can just go here. So now if I want to vanish this particular h1 completely, what I can do display of none. Okay, and there it is. So the h1 is totally gone, and as you can see, the spans are inline element, so the spans are inside of the same line. Okay, I can achieve something similar with a different property, which is the opacity. So what I can do, I can do opacity of 0.5, for example. So here is it, the opacity. So opacity, I can set it to 0 as well. If I set it to 0, so as you can see, our h1 is there. Okay, the h1 is there, and also the spans are not inside of the same line. So h1 is there. So there is a difference between the opacity of 0 and display of none. And now you might be thinking like, hey, where I can use the display none property. And it is used quite often when we basically develop a responsive mobile navigation menu. Something like this. So inside of the MDN, what I can do, I can just open up the DevTools, and as you can see, our like the navigation menu is gone, and it is inside of this hamburger menu, which is now visible. Okay, so if I just do that, so here is our hamburger menu, and now if I just zoom out a little bit, and style of here, what I can see, okay, container, so this is the one, I believe. And yes, as you can see, here it is, the display of none. If I just untoggle that, here is our hamburger menu, and we can set and unset everything. Okay, so yeah, so whenever we want to like build something like that, like the navigation menu, like the responsive navigation menu, especially uh, when we want to just hide something in certain screens and show something in certain screens, we can use the display none property to hide the element completely. Okay, by setting the opacity to 0, the element will not be gone. It will be there, but we will not be able to see that. The opacity is 0. But if I use the display none, then the element will be gone. Okay, so yeah, so this is basically the display none property. And by the way, one thing I want to clarify here, the element will be gone. What do I mean by that? Basically, if I just go here, so as you can see, there is this h1 heading, but the element will be gone from the HTML, like the visible HTML, okay? But the tag, like the HTML tag, will not be vanished by somehow. So it was one of the confusion which I had initially when I learned about this. But yeah, so basically the HTML element will be there, but there will be no way we can select that, or no way we can see that element. Okay, all right. So this is how we use the display none property. All right, in this video, we will learn a specific margin property, basically a specific value of margin, which is the auto. Okay, so let's get started. So what is that basically? So in the documentation as well, you can see here is the auto, and there are a bunch of times we have the margin auto setup. What is that? So basically, whenever we are setting auto, that means like, hey, browser, take control over the margin and set up as it is. Okay, so auto, the browser selects the suitable margin to use. For example, in certain cases, this value can be used to center an element, which we will do. Okay, so basically what I can do, I can go to the code once again, get rid of everything. Okay, not the body one. I want the font. Get rid of this, and so on. Get rid of everything here, and h1 like margin auto. And what I'll do, I'll create a div, and inside of that div I'll create a paragraph, and let's do lorem, and yeah, hit save. Okay, now I will select this div. Okay, so let's do a class of what do I do, like container or paragraph container. Okay, and here we have the class of paragraph. All right, now let's go ahead here. Let's do of paragraph container and set a width of something like 600 pixel and height of 600 pixel as well. Okay, border of 2 pixel solid, and let's do blue violet once again. Okay, and we have the paragraph as well, so dot paragraph. And here what I can do, I can do something like, hey, height of 100 pixel, and I'm not sure about the width. Not do, let's not do the height, just do the width. So width of something like 200 pixel. Okay, let's save, and here it is. Okay, we forget to add the border, so let's add a border. Okay, and do something like, I will go with here salmon. Okay. Okay, here it is. Here is our paragraph. Now, what I want basically, I want to center this paragraph inside of this box, regardless of the height and the width. And once again, we are not centering vertically, we are centering horizontally only. Okay, so how we can do that? You might be thinking, okay, let's do a text align to center. Okay, we can do that, but it centers the text only. Okay, it centers the text, not the whole element. So what we can do, we can add the margin to there. So margin of, let's say, for top and bottom 10 pixel, and for left and right we can set something like, we can calculate that, right? So if this is the width of 200 pixel and the width of the container is 600 pixel, we can say like, hey, let's do 200 pixel. Okay, so now it is apparently centered. Okay, but here is the catch. If I just set something like 800 pixel to the width of the container, then what will happen? It is not centered anymore. So what we have to do to make it dynamic? Okay, so what we can do, we can set here the margin to like top and bottom, we can set anything, but for left and right we can set auto. If we do that, then it is centered, and it is basically saying like, hey, the left and the right margin should be same. That is basically all. And select the free space which is available to this element. Okay, that is why it is inside of this, like inside of this box, it is centered horizontally. Okay, now if I just do something like the same thing, 800 pixel, now the margin will automatically change in the left and the right of this paragraph element, and this paragraph element will be centered no matter what is the width of the element, like the container element. Okay, so this is basically it. This is the margin auto. So whenever we want to, like, this is very, very handy whenever we want to center the things horizontally. But once again, you might be thinking like, hey, can I do something like auto? Okay, if I do something like that, nothing happens. Okay, so like aligning the things vertically, we have to use something like flexbox or grid, so that it is pretty much simple. So with the help of margins, we cannot align center like the things vertically. Okay, but horizontally, yes. So I can do something like 20 pixel, and once again, now our content is centered. Okay, so this is the margin auto property. Alright, in this video we will learn about the negative margins in CSS. So margins, what we have seen so far is mainly positive, but we can have some negative margins as well, and I can show it to you. So if I go to the browser, here it is. Now if I just select this H1, okay, this is the H1, and we have some margin applied to this H1. Okay, so now, okay, so for example, what I want right now, I want this box should be going over this text of heading. So how I can do that? I can do that by using negative margins. So if I just go here, so H1, that was the H1, right? And in case if you have forgotten, yep, this is the H1. Okay, now what I can do, I can do margin bottom of something like negative 10 pixel. Let's see how that looks. Okay, looking a little bit, but let's do something like negative 15 pixel. Save and go to the browser. And now, as you can see, there is an overlap between our H1 and our like this box particularly. Okay, and if I just select the H1, as you can see here, we have the negative 15 pixel worth of margin. Okay, so margins can be negative as well. So whenever you want to squish together some of the elements, you can use negative margins to do that, and we usually use negative margins for that. Okay, so yeah, this is basically that. So margins can be negative, and this margin, what I have set, like margin top, margin bottom, and also in the regular one, like this particular syntax, the general margin syntax, which we have, the shorthand syntax, we can use the negative margins as well. If I do that, yeah, so it is squished up and the margin is totally gone. Okay, so yeah, this is basically that. So it is the negative margin. Okay, so this is how we can use negative margin to squish up some elements in HTML. Okay, in this video, we will learn a weird behavior specifically regarding the vertical margin, which is called the margin collapsing or margin collapse. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, what I'll do, I'll get rid of these. Okay, and I will get rid of these CSS as well. Okay, so we have an empty slate once again. And here what I'll do, I'll create like h1 margin collapsing, and then I will create two h2, basically h2 times 2. Okay, the first one, like the first heading, and the second one, the second heading. Okay, now if we go to the browser, now as you can see, there are some margin applied to the A headings, basically the h1 and h2s. Okay, so what I'll do here for the h2, let's do a margin of 0 and see what happens. Now the 2h2, basically these two h2s are like very much all together. Okay, there is no gap, which is expected. Now what I'll do, I will add something like margin bottom of 50 pixel. Okay, so now you might be thinking, okay, so there should be a 50 pixel margin bottom. Okay, so here it is. So if I just go here, so as you can see, here is the margin, which is 50 pixel, and for this h2 as well, we have the margin of 15 pixel in the bottom, which is nice. Now what I will do, I will go here and add some class names or IDs, something like that. ID of heading 1, and I will add another ID of heading 2. Okay, all right. Now what I'll do, I will just get rid of that heading 1, and I will add the same thing, heading 2, and margin bottom of, let's do 50 pixel. So this is what we expect. So there is the 50 pixel margin. Now what I'll do, I will add the same thing to the top margin. So margin top of 50 pixel, and here as well margin top of 50 pixel. Okay, now what should be the margin between the heading 1 and heading 2? So logically you might be thinking, okay, so there is a margin top of 50 pixel and margin bottom of 50 pixel on both of the headings. So the distance between these two headings should be 100 pixel. So this, for the heading 2, we have the margin top of 50 pixel, and for the heading 1, we have the margin bottom of 50 pixel. So that is why the difference should be 100 pixels. So the total margin between these two headings should be 100 pixel. Let's see how that looks. So now, as you can see, it is not looking like the 100 pixel. And if I just select that, as you can see, it is 50 pixel. And if I go here, once again, this is the top, which is 50 pixel. So what is happening? So this phenomena, which we have just seen, it is called margin collapsing. Basically, whenever we are dealing with the vertical margins, so the highest amount of margin wins, like the magnitude of margin. So if I just go here, and for example, for this heading 1, if I just increase this margin with 60 pixel, so now the margin between these two headings will be 60 pixel. If I just select that, now here it is. This is the 60 pixel. For the heading 1, not the heading 1, the heading 2, as you can see, there is this 50 pixels of margin. But these margins are overlapping with each other. And this is only visible whenever we are dealing with the vertical margins. Whenever we are dealing with the horizontal margins, the margins just add up, which I will definitely show it to you as well. So here it is. So now if I just say like, okay, so this is the margin bottom, which is 60 pixel. Now I want to increase this margin top with 80 pixel. Now if I go here, now the difference between them, basically the margin between these two headings will be 80 pixels. So here it is. So this is the 60 pixel of margin bottom in the first heading, the heading 1. And then in the second heading, what we have the margin top of 80 pixel. So the total margin in between these two elements is basically 80 pixels. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what about negative margins? For example, let's work with these two. For example, if you have negative margin of 80 pixel and then negative margin of 20 pixel, you might be thinking, okay, negative 20 seems bigger than the negative 80, but it doesn't work like that. So the margin between those two elements will be negative 80 pixel, not the negative 20. Okay, it is just encountering the magnitude of the margin. That is all. It is just getting the magnitude, like, hey, okay, this is the 80, whatever it is. If it is negative or positive, I don't care. If this is 80 and this is 20, then the margin will be 80. And if that is negative, then the margin will be negative 80. So yeah, this is a little bit of the confusing thing. Now let's do the same thing which we have done. If I just do something like do display of inline block, once again I will do the display of inline block. Okay, and now what I'll do, I will add a margin of right of something like 20 pixel and margin left of 20 pixel. I will do the same thing. So margin right of 20 pixel and margin left of 20 pixel. Now these are inline block, so it will be inline. Okay, so the headings will be inline. Now what you think, what will be the margin in between these two elements, like these two headings? So now we are dealing with the horizontal margin, and here margin collapsing does not work. So if I go here, as you can see, now what we have here, we have, as you can see here it is. So here we have 20 pixel for the heading 1, and then for the heading 2 we have another 20 pixel. Okay, so margin collapsing do not work in the horizontal direction. But for the vertical direction, margin collapsing do work. And yeah, that is basically the behavior which CSS provides us. So it is a little bit of the tricky side to understand, but I hope you are able to understand that, like what is margin collapsing. And right now, whenever you want to just space out the elements vertically, you have to use the margins accordingly, and you have to keep in mind what margin collapsing is. Okay. All right. So this is the margin collapsing in CSS. Hey, welcome back. In this video, we will learn about the min width property and max width property in CSS. Before moving forward, just getting rid of this, and I can say min and max width. Okay, I will save, and now what I'll do, I'll just get rid of the CSS. So we have this one only. So, as the name suggests, the min width sets the minimum width of a box, and the max width sets the maximum width of a box. So what I can do, and this thing what I am showing currently right now is pretty much common. So what I can do, I can create a div with container, like the class of container, and inside of that I can just cut that and paste that here. Inside of that I will have a paragraph of lorem, and after that I will have a button which says something like click me. Okay, now many of the times what we want, if I just go to the browser, so yeah, okay, it is not loading, so open with live server, and yeah, there we go. So here it is. Okay, and why there is, okay, so this is the one. I will get rid of this. All right, so here is our content. Now what I want, basically I want to just center the content a little bit. Okay, and I want to have a minimum width of, let's say, 300 pixels or 200 pixels, and maximum width of something like 600 to 800 pixel. So what I can do here, I will select the container, and then I will do the width, the the normal width. I can do something like 60%. Okay, 60% of the width. I will add a border as well, border of 2 pixel, solid and blue violet. I will add a padding of 10 pixel. Okay, and margin, I want to have it centered, so top and bottom 0, left and right auto. Okay, and now if I just save and go here, so here is our content. Okay, now if I just squish up this screen, what happens is that our content is pretty much squished up. So what I want to have a minimum width. So what I can do, I can say like, hey, the width should be 60%, okay, but the minimum width should be some, let's say 200 pixel. So min width of 200 pixel. The width should not be less than 200 pixel in any chance. So if I go here, here, and as you can see right now, so our box is not shrinking anymore. Okay, so let's add a little bit more, let's say 400 pixel. Save, and now if I just select that box, okay, now as you can see, here it is. So the width is not changing, it is 400 pixels, and then once I am over 400 pixel, and then yeah, okay, and now the width is changing as well. Okay, So because we have added the width of 60%, so that is why it was not changing before, but right now it is 494 pixels. And if I move ahead, and this is still growing. Okay, our box is still growing. But if we want that this container basically stops growing after a certain point, we can do that by using the max width property. So max width of, let's say, 600 pixel. Okay, so if I just go here right now, if I just see, okay, so this is the maximum width. Okay, so now I can shrink down it. So our box is not changing any shape, but right now it is shrinking. Our width of 60% is taking dominance right now. And then if I just go ahead, when it reaches 400 pixel, basically, because we have the min width of 400 pixel, it will stop changing its width once again. Okay, so now the width should be 400 pixel. And now if I just once again move ahead and change our width of the screen, okay, right now it is growing. Now it is 600 pixel, and now it will stop growing. In the similar way, we have the min and the max height property as well, but we do not use that quite often, to be honest, because most of the time what we want to have a responsive website for all of the devices, and in that case the width of the device changes, not the height. Like the height changes as well, the aspect ratio changes, but we are not worried about the height because like we want to display to the user as much content as we want. Okay, so this is the min width and the max width property. And also one thing to point out here, the width is set to the content box. Okay, so if I just do something like box sizing to border box, then what will happen, the width will be applied to the border box. Okay, so just to be clear. Okay, all right, so this is the min and the max width property. Okay, in this video, we will learn about the border radius property in CSS. The border radius property is used to round the corners of a border. Okay, so as you can see in this example, we have the border radius of 30 pixels and the box is kind of rounded. So if we want to round the corners, then we want to use the border radius property in CSS. Also, this border radius property is a shorthand for these 4 properties. So basically we can set the individual border radiuses for each of the corners of the box. Okay, so we have the border top left radius, border top right radius, border bottom right radius, and we have the border bottom left radius. All right, so let's see that in action. So if I go to my code editor, we have this container once again, and inside of this container, what I'll do, I will create another div of which I will add the class of box or rounded box. Okay, all right, so now for example, let's go to the browser. Here it is. So now what I want to round the corners of this border. Okay, so of this box basically. So how I can do that, I can set the border radius. So let's learn about the individual ones. So border top, then left radius, let's say 10 pixel. I will copy paste that 3 more times. So this will be border top right radius of 10 pixel, border bottom left radius of 10 pixel, and then border bottom, this will be right radius. Okay, hit save. So now what will happen, now our box, basically our container, is now rounded. Awesome. Now what we can do, we can have the shorthand syntax as well. So if I just comment out this, and then what I can do something like border radius of, let's say, 20 pixel. If I set it just like this, then what will happen, each and every corner will have that 20 pixel of border radius. But we can change that as well. So in this shorthand syntax, if I go to the documentation, so as you can see, we can pass 4 different values for 4 different corners. So the first one will be for top left, then we have the top right, then bottom right, and then bottom left. Basically, it is following the clockworks pattern. Okay, so what I can do, for the top left radius 20 pixel, for the top right radius 30 pixel, for the bottom right 40 pixel, and then for the bottom left it will be 50 pixel. If I hit save right now, if I just go here, now as you can see, all of the border have the different amount of border radiuses. But right now what I want to do, basically I want to have a 10 pixel of border radius. Okay, so now let's work with the rounded box, basically this class and this div. Okay, so let's do that. So dot and then do rounded box to select the class, and now I can add a height of, let's say, 400 pixel. Not 400, that will be too much big. 200 pixel. Okay, width of 200 pixel, and then I can add a background color of something like blue violet. Okay, all right, and then I can do a border radius of something like 20 pixel. Okay, hit save, go here. Here is our rounded box, which is looking good. Now I will add some margin as well, so that it is not sticking to the like the button. So margin of 20 pixel. Okay, now let's see how that looks. Okay, all right. So now what I want to do, I want to convert this to a circle, this box to a circle. So how I can do that? So we can do that by 2 ways basically. First of all, what we have to do, we have to set the border radius half of the width and the height. It is relative to that. Okay, so now if I do something like 100 pixel, okay, so now it is a circle. Awesome. But if we want to use something like percentages, we can do that as well. So if I do something like 50%, so now it will be this percentage, the 50% will be relative to the width and the height of the box. Okay, so if I just save that, so now it is rounded. So if I change the height and the width to 300 pixel, and here as well 300 pixel, if I go here, we will have a bigger circle. Okay, so now it is changing according to the height and the width. But we can create a circle only when the height and the width is same. Okay, if I change it something like 500 pixel the width, then we will have an oval. Okay, and if I just change the height to something like 500 pixel, then we will have the oval which is upside down. Okay, so in that way we can like create different shapes. Okay, so we can create a circle, we can create some oval, and so on and so forth. So what I'll do, I will just do 200 pixel and here also 200 pixel. So this is basically the border radius property by which we can just round up the corners of the divs or any other elements, basically the box. Okay, so we can round up the corners of the box. All right, so this is the border radius in CSS. Hello. So in this video, we will learn about box shadow in CSS. So as the name suggests, the box shadow is used to create shadows for our boxes. Okay, so as you can see, there are some of the options here. So this is an example of the box shadow which we can have. There is another one, there is another one, and this is some box shadow which is inside of the box. We can do that as well, and we have multiple box shadows. Okay, so let's get started. So let's go into our code editor. I will get rid of this rounded box here. I will get rid of this rounded box div here, and we will work with our content here, the container. And what I'll do, I'll just get rid of this, and what I will do here, I will get rid of this min and max. Okay, width of, I can do something like 400 pixels. Okay, and okay, this is good. And for the margin, let's do 20 pixel on the top and bottom and auto. So if I go into my browser, so here it is. So what I want to do, basically, I want to create an elevated card. Okay, so how we can do that? And also we have the padding of 10 pixel. Let's do that to 20 pixel. Okay, so how we can do that? We can do that by using box shadow. So box shadow, and then we have to add some values for the box shadow. So how we can do that? Let's go to the documentation real quick, and then we can check the syntax. So box shadow, we can set it to none so that there is no box shadow. But the most common one which we usually use is something like this one, which we have. So basically what we have here is the first of all, I'm not sure why this is saying length, and length color, but what we have, for the first one, we have to have the x-axis offset. For the second one, we have to have the y-axis offset. And for the third one, like this third pixel, we can omit that as well. But for this third pixel is the blur radius. So how much blur we want, and then we have to have the color of that. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so let's do a 10 pixel or 8 pixel of x-axis. No, let's do 20 pixel so that we can see. For the y-axis offset, we can do 20 pixel as well, and the color we can do something like light sky blue, something like that. Okay, hit save and go to our browser. As you can see, here is our box shadow. Now we can set the position as well. So it is now on the right and the bottom. If I just make this one negative, so this is the y-axis offset. So if I just do that, so it is now on the top. Okay, and if I just make this thing negative, okay, then it is on the left side. So you get the idea. But for the blur radius, you cannot do that, the negative ones. So I will just go with this, and then what I'll do, I will do something like 10 pixel for the blur radius. And if I do that, now our shadow is pretty much blurred. Okay, so this border, let's do it something like this, something like this. Okay, it's a okay, so here it is. Now for the color, what I'll do, I will just go with an RGBA. So RGBA. Okay, for the red, I will do 0. For the green, I will do 0. For the blue, I will do 0. And for the alpha, 0.2. Save and go here. Now we have this shadow of our box. Okay, so there are some other options which we can have. We can have the spread radius as well, how much spread you want, and so on and so forth. But typically what I do, I am not good at remembering the box shadow or generating the box shadow. So there are many of the tools online to like generate the box shadows. I just do use that, and that is all. So there are some of the things which we can have here. Also, what I can do, I can show some other things as well. So this is the RGB of this. So let's do something like red, and we can have the multiple box shadows as well. So I can just copy that, and then I can just add a comma and then paste that out. And here I can change the color to, for the second one, I can change the color to blue. And then what I can do, I can change it to negative, and then I can change this one to negative as well. So if I just save that, so we have two box shadows, multiple box shadows, we can have that. So right now we have two box shadows. So if I just get rid of this 10 pixel of blur radius, what we will get this, okay, which is something like this. So if you want to have multiple box shadows, you can add that as well. But yeah, so what I will do right now, I will have only one box shadow, which will be the same color as this one, okay. And then for the radiuses, let's do something like 5 pixel, and then this offset 5 pixel, so x and y offset of 5 pixel, blur of 5 pixel as well. So if I just go here, okay, so it is looking kind of good, but not that much. So if I just change the opacity a little bit, okay, now it is much more subtle. Okay, so it is a card. Basically we have created a elevating card here by using the box shadows. So this is the box shadow property in CSS. All right, in this video we will learn about the overflow property in CSS. The overflow CSS shorthand property sets the desired behavior when the content does not fit in the elements padding box. Basically when the content overflows in the horizontal or and in the vertical direction. So as you can see, when basically the height and the width is fixed inside of a container, like inside a box, and the content of that particular box overflows, then we have this, and this is the default behavior, which is the overflow visible. Then we have the overflow hidden, we have the overflow clip, we have the overflow scroll, and then we have the overflow auto. And the overflow property is the shorthand for overflow-x and overflow-y. Basically the overflow in the x direction and overflow in the y direction. Okay, so let's see that in action. So we have our beautiful card which we have built. Okay, so we will use that. So now if I go to the code editor, now we have this paragraph, right? So let's do a class of paragraph. And what I'll do, I will just copy paste that a little bit bunch of times. Okay, and hit save. Now if I go to the browser, what happens is that because our container do not have a fixed height, so the content is basically there and our container is adjusting its height, but we can change that. So if I go here and let's do a height of 600 pixel, okay, go here, and now as you can see our content is now overflowing. So height, let's reduce that to something like 300 pixel, then it will be good. And what I'll do, I'll reduce the text as well a little bit. Okay, so now here it is. So by default the content is now overflowing, okay, and it is overflowing and the overflow is set to visible. But for example, you want to have a scrollable section where you can scroll, so we can do that as well. So basically what we can do, we can go to the code editor, and here for the container we can set the overflow to scroll. So first of all we have the visible, which is the by default, okay, then we will see the scrolling, so it is the visible one. Then what we can do something like scroll. Okay, so now what will happen, so there are these scroll bars will appear, okay, and now we can scroll to get the content here. Okay, so here it is. But What if you don't want to have anything like the scroll bars or anything? You just want to get rid of, not get rid of, but you don't want to show the overflowing content. So in that case, we have another property which is called hidden. Okay. Now it is hidden, and now I cannot scroll anymore. Okay. I cannot scroll. This is a fixed like height of the container, and here we have the content, the last line, but apart from that the other lines are hidden. Okay, now what we can do, we can add the scroll as well. Okay, and now we have this paragraph, right? So paragraph, we have the class of paragraph here, so we will style that. So for the paragraph, okay, so let's do a width of, so this width is 400 pixel. So what we can do, we can do a width of something like 600 pixel, and let's add a background as well. So background color of something like blue violet and color of white. Okay, white. Let's see how that looks. So right now, here it is. Here is our paragraph basically, and it is scrolling because we have set to overflow to scroll. And as you can see, it is scrolling in the both directions, vertically, which is in the Y direction, and horizontally, which is in the X direction. And these scroll bars are a little bit ugly as well, I know, but as you can see, we can scroll, okay, in the both direction. But for example, you just want to scroll vertically, you don't want to have a horizontal scroll bar. So what you can do, you can set to the overflow, just the overflow Y to scroll. If you do that, okay, so this is still scrolling because we have to do overflow X of hidden. So if we do that, then we do not have the scroll bar for the X direction anymore. We just have the scroll bar for the Y direction. Okay, so it is just vertically scrolling, and we can do the same thing vice versa, right? If I just do overflow Y to hidden and set the overflow X to scroll, if I do that, then we have this scrolling effect only in the X direction, which is the horizontal direction. So this is basically the overflow property in CSS. So whenever you want to have some overflow, like you want some more text inside of a fixed height and the width container, you can use the overflow property to set the overflowing behavior. Okay, so this is the overflow property in CSS.